welcome to the First Pres YouTube channel. Today is December 18th. My name is Larry Underwood. I am the Family Ministry Director, and today we are going to talk about the things we've been talking about in family ministry, maybe a little bit about next week, but really wanted to focus on Christmas because ultimately we're talking about hope. Hope in our lives, expectation, and all of the things that surround the Advent season. Thanks for watching. I want to read an excerpt from a book by John Blase. The book is called Teaching Wonder, Recapturing the Awe of Christmas. And the quote goes like this. I'll put it up on the screen so you can read along with me. It says, "She was brave, only Joseph by her side, a cramped place to give birth, noise everywhere and more. As she screamed out in pain, the deceiver stood ready to devour my son. The heavens shook with war. Michael and his angels reeled. Mighty One, do something." I am. Interestingly enough, God is doing something even when we don't see it, even when we don't expect it. And like we were talking about earlier, that is what our hope is built on. I'm reminded of the words from a particular hymn. The hymn is basically The Solid Rock, written by a guy named Edward Mote. He was a carpenter when he wrote the hymn, but he later on became a pastor. It's the only hymn he wrote, but it happens to be one of my favorites. I'm going to read just 3 of the actual verses. The verses go like this. "My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. When darkness seems to veil his face, I rest on his unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil. His oath, his covenant and blood support me in the whelming flood. When all around my soul gives way, he then is all my hope and stay." Life is tough. Life is going to be tough. Even when we try to make it comfortable and easy, things that we can't control make life tough. The mission that we're called to, sharing the gospel, sharing Jesus, sharing hope with other people, is tough. It is not easy. Most people don't seem like they're very interested at all. But God is still knocking on the door of everyone's heart. God still has a plan for every single one of us. So discovering it for ourselves and sharing it with other people becomes so huge in our lives and in our day-to-day existence that's the very mission that we're called to. I absolutely love the story in Luke of Mary being told, "You're going to have a baby and you're going to name this baby Jesus." It's an incredible story. And Mary, she's trying to discern exactly what is this angel here for? What is he telling me? And she senses some joy in the news. She knows that it's a big deal, but the angel doesn't tell her the whole story. The angel doesn't tell her that you're going to be very, very pregnant and then have to travel a long distance riding on a donkey. And when you get to your destination, there's not going to be a great room to stay in. You're basically going to have to find any space you can. You'll actually wind up in a manger, and it won't be very, very comfortable. And then after you give birth, you're going to discover that somebody wants to take your child from you and kill your child. And that's going to be alarming, to say the least. But then by the time your kid is like 12 years old or so, you're going to actually lose him just for a brief period. And that's going to cause a little bit of angst. But then as you fast forward through his life, when he's barely in his 30s, he's going to make enough people upset that they're going to actually crucify your son. The angel does not give her all of those details. Much like we don't get all of the details of our life, but we still know the end story. We still claim the victory, and that is very, very exciting. Romans 12 verse 12 says this. It says, "Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer." I think if we let that define our life, it's going to make us incredibly successful. Sometimes when we think of hope, we're thinking like, well, I hope I don't get sick, or I hope the weather is okay, or I hope I make it to where I'm going on time. And perfectly fine to hope for those things, but what we are hoping in as Christ followers, it's a guaranteed thing. It's something that it's definite. It's already done. Jesus signed, sealed, and delivered on this promise like 2,000 years ago. So for us, that should be an incredible feeling and very, very motivating. You see, ultimately, hope for a Christian is actively waiting for something that is guaranteed. Hope isn't predicated on the weather or getting somewhere on time. It's God's timing, it's God's plans for our life. And sometimes that confuses us. Sometimes in life we're disappointed by circumstances that we're in or things that we see or experience. But God does have a plan. God does have a plan. You heard that correctly. God has a plan, and sometimes us just leaning into what His plans might be for us is all we need to do to take the next step. Sometimes in our lives it's about a small thing that we can change that actually makes a big difference in our life. And my goal, personally, is to be open to making those changes, open to taking those risks, open to seeing the things that God might have for me, my family, and for people around me. Because it is ultimately part of our job to not just be discipled, but be making disciples, which means we are pouring our lives into other people. We're allowing God to fill us up so that we're overflowing with this joy and this understanding, this contentment, this eternal hope, so to speak. And that is exactly how we interact with other people to bring them to Christ. It's exciting at Christmas time to think about that, but as we get closer to the new year, I'm even more excited for the things that God has in store for us. Thanks for checking us out on YouTube. We are also on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. You can follow us on social media, and you can come to church on Sunday mornings, 9 a.m. for a worship service in our fellowship hall. 11 a.m. is our regular worship service in the main worship center. And at 10 o'clock, we do a connection and group hour with discipleship classes and Sunday school classes and all kinds of things for people to interact with each other and learn about Jesus. Look forward to seeing you. We love you. Merry Christmas.